recording will. Great. Well, before we get started, thank you so much to our presenting sponsor, Bank of America. Their support throughout this program and this series has made it possible to bring these experts and these updates directly to you without any sort of registration and support the work of the Seattle Metro Chamber of Commerce. As I mentioned, Business Health Trust and the Chamber have been helping partner in this in addition with Reach King County. Reach King County is part of the chamber that really focuses on helping build and retain and grow small businesses. So if you're interested in how you can grow your business and how the chamber might be able to help you in that, please reach out to us or visit the Seattle Metro Chamber of Commerce webpage and click on Reach King County. All right, well, today we have the privilege of being joined by King County Metro and Sound Transit to talk about service adjustments, updates, and safety protocols. Additionally, as I mentioned, we'll hear from Swedish Health Services and Oasis T-Zone, two employers in the region that will share their experiences with transit throughout the pandemic. I'd like to invite Terry White from King County Metro to join me. Welcome.
Well, good morning, and thank you for the wonderful welcome. How are you?
I'm doing very well. It's a great day to ride Metro.
I agree. I agree.
Well, I will turn it over to you, and then I believe Peter's going to follow you, and then I'll rejoin at the end when we're talking with our employers.
All right. I believe we have a nice, quick slide presentation set up, ready to go here. So let's just go ahead and get into it. Fully understanding that we are all continuing to learn in real time as it pertains to this COVID-19 pandemic. It is my pleasure to be with you today to discuss how we begin the process of moving from a response mode of this pandemic to a more recovery-related mode. Next slide. So I want to begin by thanking all of the employer partners and transit advocates on this call for your tremendous support. The way that transit has helped our region grow safely, sustainably, and equitably over these past years and decades is because of you. And I especially want to thank you for your partnership during an incredibly challenging past year and a half. I'm looking forward to hearing from the employer panelists as well as your comments and your questions. Our goal remains the same: to work with you to ensure that all of us emerge better and stronger, and that we help you get there, and that we are being your first choice for mobility. Next slide. Although our state would never have chosen to have been the first confirmed COVID case in the United States, I could not be prouder of our region's response and our national leadership. Thank you all for that. Metro, Sound Transit, and our partners have always kept moving to support customers counting on us. We quickly developed a layer safety approach, really, that protected the health of everyone that used transit. And throughout this time, engagement and collaboration with employers, with communities, with advocates proved very essential. In some very uncertain times, we did our best to provide flexibility to support employer and employee needs and to provide support where needs are greatest. Next slide. Looking ahead, we are committed to rebuilding a mobility agency that's even better, even bigger, and more reliable than before. We realize how important transit is to ensure our region's continued livability, prosperity, and sustainability. That includes attracting and retaining talent, reducing congestion, and ensuring everyone has access to those opportunities. Next slide. My personal confidence in transit's dependability and safety is such that I actually never stopped riding during these past years. Whether you or your employees are riding now, or if you're exploring when and how to return, I want to share three very important points, which I'll go into in more detail. First, we are open for business. Transit's all-day regional network is here to serve you. Second, safety was our first priority long before the pandemic, and it will remain so long afterward. And third, I want to share some of what is taking place to re-energize the places we care about and reconnect us to the people that we love. Next slide. Although Metro suspended some service at various points since spring and summer of 2020, we are now back to 85% of our pre-pandemic service levels. And guided by Governor Inslee, area transit agencies, Metro and Sound Transit included, went back to full passenger limits at the beginning of July. We're currently serving more than 160,000 riders per day and have a great deal of capacity available to you as we look to regrow back to the more than 400,000, I should say, daily riders that we experienced 2 years ago. Next slide. Our all-day frequent regional network, transit network will further expand and improve on October 2nd. At Metro, we will add back another 200,000 service hours, and this means restoring service on 38 additional routes, including 21 that were previously suspended. Our partners at Sound Transit will also be opening 3 brand new Link Light Rail stations at U District, Roosevelt, and Northgate, with many more stations soon to follow in the near-term horizon. Next slide. At Metro, we prioritize service where needs are greatest, and that has been especially true during this past 18 months. In the pandemic, we responded to the strong need for service in places like South King County, where ridership remained strong and essential workers counted on transit. The 2 maps shown here help to describe the additional service restorations for October 2021 as even more people return to transit all across King County. Next slide. If you've been away from transit, we've been very busy over the past year designing, implementing, and constantly improving health enhancements. To share just a few examples, every bus, boat, streetcar, train, and other vehicle is now disinfected every day. We upgraded our air filters on every single bus in our fleet. You'll also see windows and roof hatches open whenever possible to introduce even more fresh air into the system. We're also asking customers to use contact-free payment like an Orca card. With equal importance, we are saying, please know that mask requirements are still in place by federal law. If you forget to bring your own mask, that's okay. There are free mask dispensers on board all of our fleet. Next slide. We also want you to enjoy every part of your journey, even when you're not on the bus or transit, and to feel safe throughout. At Metro, we're working closely with safety and security personnel, as well as reimagining our safety and security at large. And I invite you to participate in our ongoing outreach and surveys. Next slide. I'm also excited about the work taking place by the City of Seattle, the Downtown Seattle Association, and others to clean and revitalize our county. Some of these photos you're seeing are from the Welcome Back Week events underway last week and this week. Next slide. To welcome back our riders who have been away and to give all of our customers confidence in our system, I wanted to give this group an early preview of our upcoming marketing campaign. This is our It's a Great Day to Ride Transit. This campaign was informed by conversations, presentations, and research with community members, employers, partners, and many, many others. Next slide. From small businesses to large employers to historically underserved residents, there was broad support for these bright messages and visuals. Next slide. I'm pleased to share just a few examples of these with you today. You'll begin to see these on billboards, digital advertising, on transit, and in many other avenues and languages. Next slide. One of the advantages of the It's a Great Day to Ride Metro campaign is that it allows us to show the diversity of our communities and our region. And we're also showing all of the modes across our mobility network and the many ways our customers count on transit. Next slide. Here too is our one pager with some very helpful messaging. And we will be sharing this with all the participants on this call. This is just one of a suite of resources under development. And we also want to hear from you what you would deem to be helpful. Next slide. You'll also continue to see our healthier Metro icons and messages while you use transit, sharing how we're protecting customers and the steps we're asking riders to take. Throughout the summer and fall, you'll see incentive programs to encourage people to take transit on their way to the workplace, as well as to appointments, to dining, performing, sports events, and much, much more. And ahead of one of the most exciting service changes in recent memory in October, we will be letting our customers know how the new rail stations and the updated bus connections affect their trip. We'll also be letting everyone in our region know that even more frequent service is on the way. And with that, I'm pleased to hand the mic over to my good friend and Metro's partner, Sound Transit CEO, Peter Rogoff.
Well, thank you, Terry, and good morning, everybody. And thanks to the Chamber, really, for inviting Terry and me to come and talk about the stuff we love to talk about. And this is why we come to work every day, to serve passengers and provide better, clean, safe, efficient, and desirable and reliable service to the public. I will not kid anyone in that the pandemic has presented all kinds of new challenges, none of which we necessarily anticipated, but I think I'm very confident in saying that it has made our agency, Terry's agency, I think all the transit agencies in the region stronger. And it has made our partnerships, which were already quite strong, even stronger. As we were going through the worst of the beginning of the pandemic, all of the transit general managers and CEOs were on the phone daily, then moved to a different cadence of every other day because we all had to be talking about what we were seeing, what we were hearing, and how we could collectively respond with the sole goal of meeting the needs, the continuing needs of the public and doing it safely. And now we're in a much better position to not only continue to do it safely, but also be much more attuned to what service is being demanded in what time frame. And I think thanks to a great many local leaders, but also to the federal government, which has been generous with the transit industry in its COVID relief bills. We are also in a position to add back the service as the demand arises. And in the case of Sound Transit, and I think in other agencies, we're actually adding back service before the demand is clearly there. There is a inevitable tension that's going on right now between transit agencies across the country, between kind of the chicken and egg issue is, do you add back service to entice people back, or do you wait till people come back and then add back the service? Speaking for Sound Transit, we are adding the service now to entice people to come back. And I'm quite confident that that's going to show a return as people get more and more excited about getting back to the office. I'm in my office today. Every time I come into the office, I run into a few more staff who are coming back to the office for the first time. And it's thrilling, frankly, to just see people in person and be able to greet them one-on-one, having not seen folks for well over a year, or having only seen people on a screen during all that time. So I, for one, am very optimistic about not only the return of our ridership, but the return of downtown, the return of business activity, and I think people are hungering for it. Why don't we go to the next slide? Hoping someone's running the slide. Thank you. You know, we sometimes make the mistake of just assuming that everyone knows who Sound Transit is and what we do. I think it's just bears some repeating for those that don't or might view it as a localized service. Our service area, as you can see in the map on the right, spans the urbanized areas of all three counties, Pierce, King, and Snohomish. We run commuter rail currently all the way up from Lakewood to Seattle and down from Everett to Seattle. We are running light rail and are poised, as Terry alluded, to expanding our light rail network. We are about the business of launching the largest transit expansion program in the United States right now. And that really is a result of the ST2 and especially the ST3 ballot measure that passed in 2016. And I would argue we are the largest transit expansion program in America, in part because of all the transit expansion we did not do in failing to pass the forward thrust amendments in 1968 and 1970. So we are playing catch-up ball as a region of this size and this population and this amount of transit demand. And we are working very aggressively, as you can see from the side of I-5 and driving out to the east side, in making sure that we are getting the service to the people who demand it as quickly as possible. Why don't we go to the next slide? So this really is just a snapshot of everything we have under construction right now. You can see that we've already got 6 major transit expansions in construction at the same time. I can tell you, having had experience with transit on a national scale, any one of these projects would be a flagship decade accomplishment for most transit agencies in America. We, however, are spinning 6 plates at the same time while also building a garage and a maintenance facility to support all this. It is, it's very, very exciting. It takes a lot of bandwidth and many, many partners, both in terms of other transit operators who, as Terry alluded, will be providing bus service to feed folks into our expanding light rail network. We'll also partners in terms of the municipalities in which we are building, in trying to make sure that not only do we just deliver the mobility to those communities, but also capture the opportunities that light rail presents to those communities. And really, the smartest cities are the ones who've really done a great deal of planning for their own economic expansion that will accompany light rail. For any of you who spend much time on the east side, it's really kind of remarkable how much development is already happening around our 10 Eastlink stations that will open in 2023, just 2 years from now, well before we're actually delivering the rail. One of the major complaints that we get is about construction noise. We're actually very careful with our contractors about construction noise, but it seems like 9 out of the 10 times we get complaints about construction noise, we're telling folks at the other end of the phone, yes, we know that project. That actually isn't the transit project. That's the condos being built next door, the retail facilities that are being built next door, the expanded campuses that universities are building because of the proximity to light rail. It's really very exciting. And I think what we're seeing happening on the east side, we will now soon be seeing in greater intensity in downtown Linwood, in Kent, Des Moines, and Federal Way. And as the network expands, so too will the prosperity expand in all of the places we're hitting. Why don't we go to the next slide? So we talked about this, you know, on the nearest term. So we're opening a major rail extension every year for the next 3 years, except in the third year, we're opening 3. The soonest is coming to our Northgate extension with stations both at U District, then to Roosevelt, then on to Northgate. You know, U District obviously being a mixed university and business and residential area, Roosevelt being an increasingly dense residential area, and Northgate being sort of a major transit hub, as well as the new Kraken practice facility going up and the reimagining of the mall and the retail around there. It's really quite exciting, and that's going to open October 2nd. All our preparations are going well. It's always exciting when we open new service, and it's going to be quite the celebratory weekend. And as Terry pointed out, very careful planning with King County Metro and community transit is going to result in all kinds of great connectivity for bus passengers to disembark at Northgate and get on light rail and get to their station, get to their destination that much faster. Just to give you a flavor, when it's up and running on October 2nd, you'll be able, you know, we're expecting about 35,000 additional passengers, and you'll be able to get from Northgate to Westlake in 14 minutes, no matter what the weather conditions, no matter what the traffic. Many of you will know that that is often there and a little bit north of Northgate is where I-5 tends to seize up, and it's anyone's guess about how long it will take. But we will be able to deliver folks in 14 minutes routinely, and we're looking forward to that. Let me go to the next slide. So when we talk about our customer experience, I mean, we have, you know, a focus on the passenger experience as a core priority and value for Sound Transit. And when we think about that, we really are thinking about making sure that people are not only getting where they want to go, but also doing to, like I said, I use the word not only reliable service, but also desirable service. We pride ourselves on serving everybody. We pride ourselves on the fact that we are serving the transit dependent, and there is no question that the pandemic really reminded us, not only us and our partners like King County Metro and others, but really transit agencies all across the country, reminded folks of who the transit dependent are and where they reside, because those are the folks who continue to ride throughout the pandemic. That says, we also pride ourselves from not only an anti-congestion agenda, but also a climate-friendly agenda in serving what we call choice riders, folks who are deciding to leave a car in the driveway and take transit to work, perhaps because their employer is providing them a free Orca card, perhaps because it's just convenient and they can do email and listen and read their favorite blog posts on their way to work. Perhaps it's just easier to leave the driving to somebody else. So all those things taken together, we want to serve the entire region for the better prosperity of everybody. And why don't we take that to the next slide and showing what we're doing on customer experience. So in terms of keeping riders safe, this has been our action plan, very similar to what King County has done. Like I said, we've been on the phone routinely very early in the pandemic. You will all remember that there was this notion that we can get the virus from surface areas. That has been largely debunked, but we have not stood down from the enhanced cleaning that we're doing. And frankly, it just provides folks not only with peace of mind, but it provides for cleaner service. At the same time, we have been, we started requiring masks on the service before the federal mandate came down. Interesting debate going on right now on how long the mask mandate should continue, not only just for transit services, but also for airlines. The tension between the concerns about the variants, as well as the challenge of folks who are increasingly, as the economy opens up and masks are not required, to remind people that when they're on a transportation conveyance, the federal government still requires a mask. It gives people peace of mind, and we're continuing to enforce it. We are with King County Metro buses on our own buses. We're increasing the airflow and air filtration. And we are planning a very significant push on marketing and welcoming people back, as many employers, including Sound Transit, will be bringing employees back in a more routinized way right after Labor Day. We not only want to welcome folks back to transit during that period, but also get them excited about Northgate, which will be opening less than 1 month later. Why don't we go to the next slide? In terms of our service, you can keep going to the next slide. We, like I said earlier, are really focused on putting the service out there and enticing people back rather than sitting there waiting till we have crowding situations to put the service back on. And probably the area where we've done this most intensively is on our Link Light Rail service, getting back to 8-minute peak headways and 10 minutes, obviously in the middle of the day, evenings and weekends. That's where the reliability comes in, that you know, just to give you a flavor for it. And I experienced it during when we had 30-minute headways because ridership was so light during the pandemic. And having been a rider during that period, it's incredibly frustrating to miss a train and then know that you're going to wait 28 minutes. That's not the kind of service we want to provide really ever. So we're back to 15 minutes in the early morning and late evening, but then 10 minutes for the rest of the day, and obviously in peak AM and PM peaks to 8-minute headways. We are providing all of our Sounder South service, even though that there's plenty of seating available, running down between Seattle, Puyallup, Kent, through Auburn to Tacoma and all the way down to Lakewood. In Sounder North, we have reduced the number of round trips, but we are adequately serving the need there, and I'll be monitoring that. Fortunately, we have the financial wherewithal, not all transit agencies in America do, to be able to provide service. And I've told the board on multiple occasions, if I'm going to come back for a budget adjustment mid-year, the only reason I'm going to do that is to provide more service in response to demand. But right now, we've got plenty of service out there to welcome people back. Why don't we go to the next slide? So as I said, our strategy in terms of how we add service back in the coming year, the one thing I can say, especially as it relates to the bus network, we're going to be restoring service. And like I said, we've got plenty of service out there to meet demand. But as even more demand comes, I don't think we will have the identical timetable and the identical service levels that we had pre-pandemic. That is because we are waiting to see how commuting patterns change. We were already seeing, that while we were meeting our expected ridership at peak periods, we were actually exceeding expectations in the off-peak periods. And I think that has a lot to do with not only the gig economy, the whole 9-to-5 routine is less prominent as it used to be. I think tech workers, my son being one of them, is given remarkable flexibility on how and when they get their work done. It also enables people, we've also just a lot of people moving around the region, especially students, to universities at all hours of the day. So we will be rebuilding our service to a different cadence, but it's going to be a cadence not only based on the demand that we see, but also much more intensively on equity. We did learn a number of things about our transit-dependent riders. And like I said, what communities, especially in South Seattle and the South Sound generally, including places like Puyallup and Tacoma and Lakewood, where we can do better by communities of color, and because the demand stayed high and will remain high. And just as I said, we don't want to be providing very, very long waits for folks on light rail. The same should and will be true of our bus service. Like I said, we are adding back service a little sooner than demand. We think that's the right posture. We think that's the right place to be to welcome people back, because we want, when people come back, for the service to be reliable and desirable. Next slide. So next slide. I think we're done. So with that, I will pass it back, and thanks again for giving us the opportunity to share where we're at, and hopefully what will be a pandemic in the rearview mirror.
That is the goal. Thank you so much. That's very helpful to kind of see the vision as well as what you guys are doing and some of the changes. So I wanted to turn a little bit and hear from our employers before we ask King County Metro and Sound Transit to rejoin us and talk through some questions and some discussion as a group. So I'd like to invite Eamon from Oasis T-Zone and Mike Denny from Swedish Health Services to join me. Please turn on your videos. Good to see you. Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Well, so Eamon, let's start with you and, tell us about your role and your company, and talk to us a little bit about your employees' experience using transit during COVID and or now how they're returning to office.
Yeah, so the main company is Oasis. I have other entities, Eastern Cafes, a coffee shop that's currently, we're on hold right now. We're trying to change it up a little bit to kind of refresh it for new operation. So it's not currently open yet in Chinatown. I had a couple of bars that have been closed since the pandemic. So I've been in the food industry for quite a while in different types of settings. And the ORCA program, when we first started that, I can't remember when, it's a couple of years ago now, before the pandemic, it was a scary kind of small business thing to jump into. It's a commitment. It's a, once you give something, you don't want to take it back. And so you want to make sure that you have a system to be able to do this stuff, and it's valuable to the staff. And so, it was a lot of discussion, who actually wanted it, was it a benefit they wanted? And so spent a lot of time on that. When we took the dive forward, we found that people just love it. It is a massive savings for them besides them just going by on their own, a monthly pass or individual trips. They actually need it really badly to get to work. We're able to attract people from a wider employee base because we have that option for them. And we're finding that, they're, especially our kitchen workers, a lot of them live in the South End. They tend to tell, when I say, hey, do you guys have any friends that need work? They talk about the ORCA program as a benefit to work here. Not only do we have good pay and we have health benefits if you want, but we have this bus program that you can use during work, when you're just traveling on your own, whatever. It's a free pass, and not free, but a highly subsidized pass for them. So it's it's been great for us all around.
Yeah, it's such a great option to enhance your employee benefits, right? To help attract and retain folks, and also help them get around outside of work as well, as they can use that pass. Mike, tell us the same question. Kind of tell us about your role in your company and your employees' experiences using transit.
Great. So thanks. I'm the Chief Real Estate Officer at Swedish, which is all the real estate things, planning, design, and construction, food service and facilities, and parking and transportation. So that really leads me to this. And I think that the highlights for us, we saw our first patient, in February last year, first COVID positive patient. But we're still open, right? We never shut down, and so our employees still needed to get to the hospitals and the clinics, and we do participate in ORCA, which is a great program and really helps us drive down our vehicle occupancy, vehicle rates, and the rest of the things we focus on. And so pre-COVID, we were right around 3,500 employees a month using the ORCA cards, and then in April that was 32 employees. And so we still had lots of people coming to work, but we had to find alternate ways to do that. And so, working through that during the pandemic, implemented a pretty flexible workplace environment program, so that, that we've got about 2,800 people that can be virtual, at least part-time, patient facing. And so that helped us develop that plan, working with some folks at Microsoft and Experie to roll that out, and then building that back over time so that people felt safe. So really working hard with SEIU, who represent a lot of our employees, and with our infection prevention department, our chief medical officers, and the rest of the folks that did videos on the bus, actually, with us on and talking about how safe it was, and then it was okay to get back on the bus. And so we drove that back up to about 640 people last August. And then last month we were about up to 700, about 1,758 people used their ARC cards in June. So that's great. We're about halfway back, still promoting that. I think the part of the that half that we haven't seen come back to use their ORCA cards are people that were being successful having them work virtually, which
Yeah.
And so that's really, we're finding that balance now. We really did a return to work last summer and went to the hybrid model. So people that could, were super supportive of them working from home part-time if that works for them. Now we're finding that balance point here in the second quarter, and look at that going forward as our model.
Yeah, finding that balance, definitely impacts the utilization of programs like the ORCA and transit in all sorts of ways, right? I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you've encouraged your employees to use these transportation benefits. You mentioned some videos. What are some other things that you guys have been doing that have worked, or some things you've done that people didn't respond to as well, so that people can kind of learn from your experiences?
Yeah, and King County's been great. We've working through all the transit agencies in helping, in weekly newsletters, and I sat in town halls, and we did all the employee engagement where we talked about all the things that the ways that the transit systems were addressing safety, and the cleanliness of the buses, and the number of turns that they had in the air, and how many times they're cleaning everything and disinfecting, and all that's great, and it is stuff that we talk about every day, of course, as a health system. And so they get that, and they appreciated it. And I think every time we did that, we could see this incremental increase in the number of riders. And so I think, we'll be a little bit more sophisticated here and with better data by the end of summer to understand what our new normal is for ridership, and certainly track our single occupancy vehicle rates. So we'll see, by August, September, we'll see where that balance is.
Eamon, what are your employees' main concerns, or were there any, about using public transportation, and how did you address those as an employer?
Yeah, a lot of them, so they need public transport. They're used to taking it. They just used to spending more on it before they sign up for our program. So they absolutely need it. During the pandemic, not only was bus ridership, like they just, I can't get to work, either their bus lines were cut or they didn't feel comfortable taking it. And so there was a lot more carpooling or other coworkers trying to pick each other up, the ones that did drive. A lot of those have been addressed now, with the vaccinations and everything like that. The fears over the pandemic stuff has been alleviated. The routes have been coming back. And so I haven't really heard a lot of issues around that anymore. And so everybody that's been using it has been, from what I see as far as the staff interactions have been back to it. A lot of them did, stop, their, the employee contribution side. They said, I'm not going to take the bus, or, right now it's free for a while. And so we had to kind of re-educate people sometimes. Everybody kind of forgot about how the program and stuff, so we had to kind of relaunch it. All new employees that come in, we do spend time on the onboarding when they're filling out all their paperwork and stuff to specifically explain about the ORCA program, and how it works. But especially when we have in the restaurant field, a lot of people that don't speak English as a first language, they don't quite understand why that we're taking $7 or whatever it is from their paycheck, and try to explain, well, you're going to get this card, you can do everything, and so there's a lot of education, a lot of just constant. We have meetings with our staff twice a week, and a lot of times the topics are around benefits. We also have monthly staff meetings, and so we encourage people. We know that when people sign up for benefits, that they are longer term employees, and so we want people to stay. We don't want people to lose and to leave for a reason that we can prevent. And so they've been really receptive to it. They understand it, and they're really proud to work for a place that can provide that. So that's been as far as the food industry, it's been pretty needed. So
yeah, that's very, very helpful to kind of also have that context of some of the things that people were doing when bus service wasn't operating, or maybe their routes had changed. As an employer, how did you support employees, or what tips would you have for employers who still have employees whose, routes might be a little bit different or those sorts of things?
For me, it was, we changed our schedule quite a bit, from reducing hours to what our typical open and closers would be. We tried to stagger shifts. We knew that some people lived out in certain areas and other people were in the neighborhood. And so we tried to, we really talked about, hey, this is a team effort. We don't have a big team. It's not like we have, everybody knows each other. And so we got to help each other out, so that was very much like, okay, and you live in the neighborhood, so you could pick up these shifts, let's change these things around. We're all trying to work this out. And so that was a big help to be able to, for the staff to be very flexible and for us to be as understanding as we can and try to change the business a little bit. And the customers understood. They knew that, hey, we just try to tell the customers we're a little short because we had to change our normal staffing up or our hours up, things like that. And so, so it was we actually, during the beginning of the pandemic, we actually jumped on a daily virtual call for about 30 minutes just to say, new things that are happening, and things seem to be changing daily. And what we thought would work wouldn't work, and just constantly fine tuning it to make it work for the staff. Luckily, most people stuck around, and we were able to balance the things out and give people time off if needed. And anytime people had any symptoms, they just, called out. We were able to just manage around that. So it was a definite roller coaster, but giving people as many options as possible, and as a business, knowing that, hey, this is a pandemic. It's not just hurting the business, it's hurting the staff also and the customers. So we've all kind of got to make sacrifices and changes. It's not going to be business as usual, and just be okay with that. That it's going to be losses this year. It's going to be, missed opportunities this year. That's what it is, it's okay. And so as a business person, it's hard pill to swallow. You never want to see sales drop, or you never want to see customers walk out, or, staff not be able, you don't want to see that, but it's something you just have to adapt to and just realize it's everybody's going through it. So. Yeah,
flexibility, I think, is the biggest theme that we'll see emerge out of 2021, I think, is flexibility on all accounts and figuring out the new normal and how to support employees and customers and all of those things. So I really appreciate your insights and just hearing how you have been dealing with that and supporting your employees during this time. I wanted to invite Peter and Terry to turn your videos back on and join us as we talk through some other questions that have come up. But first, I wanted to just ask the question about, from an employer perspective, how do you get a transportation program started for your employees? We've heard the huge value in attracting and retaining talent from both of these employers. And I'd love to just, hear quickly about what would be that next step that employers, large or small, could take?
Well, I could start. The Commute Seattle program, which has been in place for some time, is really your quickest kind of one-stop shop, I think. Just going to their website and seeing, because they are deliberately set up for the purpose of getting people signed up. I mean, it was part of an early air quality initiative to try to get as many people onto the transit system as possible. And I believe that may still be your best one-stop shop to kind of for employers. But Terry might have, and thank you, Bill Bryant from King County Metro just put the website up. And Sarah Udelhoff from Commute Seattle is with us, so all the better.
Yeah, I know we at Business Health Trust, we've partnered with Commute Seattle for a number of years, and we're also happy to help make connections for people. I hear the value of the benefit just hugely from our small employers that are able to offer this awesome thing for their employees at a discounted rate, and really kind of provide that transportation ability beyond even just getting to and from work.
And I do think one of the things that the way the program has been structured actually makes it workable for a small employer. Yeah. And that's the real benefit. My wife headed a nonprofit for a number of years, and she only had 5 employees, but they participated and gave away orchid cards, and it just wasn't that big of an ordeal compared to every other piece of paper they have to process.
Yeah. So as people begin going back into the office, will Metro be adding more buses and runs from different neighborhoods to help offset like bridge closures in West Seattle?
We are absolutely working with Seattle with regards to plans. If you think about it, transit is 50% the plan and then 50% addressing what didn't go right on that day. So as you can imagine, we have a lot of alternatives already in our back pockets ready to go, depending on what the needs are any given day. But we are partnering heavily with SDOT to ensure that we have access to the bridge at the right times, but we also have some alternatives that we're putting into place, including the water taxi and all. So there are other ways to get into Seattle. I think a lot of commuters are trying to figure those out themselves. We'll continue on that path and process. We're going to invest some funds to make sure that we're doing that as best as possible.
So turning to our two employers here, as you think about your ORCA program, can employees use transportation benefits for trips other than commuting to work on Metro, bus, et cetera? You know, are there other parts of this program that you think employers should be aware of?
For me, I mean, as a small business employee, I would say that the initial sign up of it was kind of daunting because there's so much that this program offers besides just a regular ORCA card that a person would buy. I buy ORCA cards for a long time on my own, and I didn't realize how much it was. And so it was kind of daunting to say, like, was that extra? Is that an a la carte service? What is this? And so it took some time to filter all that out. Kimberly Anderson, our accountant, had just been working with the people on this program now, and she does other research. Hey, we have some issues with late night people getting home and safety and some of that. So we've been really exploring the van pool, and that was something that kind of just went over, I think, my head and a lot of people's heads that, hey, that's part of the program. And so we didn't really understand how that worked until she kind of really looked into it and said, this is what it looks like and sounds great, you know? So I was like, oh, okay. And so there's all these features. There's also emergency, you know, rides home, cab rides home, all those kind of things that I think, you know, there's so many features that we haven't taken advantage of as aggressively yet. And so, you know, we've been exploring as a team, you know, with all this stuff going on, you know, we need to re-educate ourselves and the staff about all these features to it. So it is kind of daunting at first, but there's like a ton of benefits that is surprisingly provided with this program for the, you know, through the business and to our staff. So
Mike, how have you guys handled requests for parking? You know, are you getting more of those requests from employees as a benefit, as you've talked about your numbers, and kind of what is your strategy around that?
Yeah, so naturally, when people started, you know, deciding they want to be in the mass transit business for commuting, it was really, you know, April, May, June, when it was really scary. I think we get protective amnesia and don't think about how crazy that was last spring, because we didn't really have great data all the time, and there was lots of stories going around. And so we did have a lot of people wanting to drive single occupancy vehicles, and we allowed that for a period of time, and then went back to not allowing that, especially in the downtown hospitals. I think to Iman's point, that the greatest way to take advantage of all of this, we have full-time transportation concierges at Swedish for our employees, and so anybody that's part of the team here can call over. We've got 13,000 people, so they're super busy at times, but they can call in and say, I live here, this is the shift I typically work on these days, and they'll either arrange to have them join a van pool, or to tell them what the right bus routes are, or to talk about, you know, how to use your ORCA card. Everybody that works in Swedish gets an ORCA card at orientation, with a little blip for a few minutes about all the benefits that you can use, and that it's not just to get to and from work. We want people to use mass transit as much as possible. And so I think having somebody, if you're an employer, having somebody on staff, even if you don't have full-time people that are the concierge arranging all that thing, if you find somebody on the staff that's really passionate about it, the transit authorities are fantastic about giving material so that you can disseminate it out and get people excited about it. And then it is true. Once you start digging in, it's way more than, you can get on the bus and off the bus.
So I have a question for Sound Transit and King County Metro. So what agency, or where in your agencies is safety and concerns live? Sorry, let me rephrase that. Who's responsible for maintaining public safety? And if people have issues, how do they go about reporting those?
Well, I'm going to sort of answer both of those. We have a safety department. We have a relatively new chief safety officer who's been, who I recruited from Chicago, who has good depth in passenger rail experience from the CTA as well as in other transportation modes, and was the right guy for what we needed in these times. His name is David Wright. Who's responsible for safety? I think Terry and I would both agree that he and I are responsible for safety because it's the paramount in what we do. And obviously responsibility starts with the top. But getting down to the granular level, we have customer service lines in terms of taking inputs on the phone as well as online from passengers, and they can even text in concerns and complaints. I mean, we have a pretty broad online presence trying to connect with our customers through every portal that's out there as a way. And especially if there is a safety concern, it's obviously something we want to jump on right away. So they have a direct line into the safety department. Now, if it's safety about disease, it's one thing. If it's safety about crime, it's quite a different thing. I mean, we obviously have not only transit security people deployed around our system, we are also in partnership with the King County Sheriff's Office that has a Sound Transit Police Division, just like they have a King County Metro Division. Mm-hmm. And they will cross-pollinate in the event of episodes to the sheriff is charged with putting all the necessary resources to bear on any incidents in real time, no matter what patch is on the side of the deputy's uniform. That has the mechanism by which we seek to, be mindful and stay on top of any criminal issues.
I would just add, I agree with Peter. We are both ultimately the responsible citizens for our safety, security, and all. We have a robust program that you can access via our customer service lines. And in addition to that, I think, as Peter mentioned earlier, we've been hanging out almost weekly, having discussions about health and the safety of the system. We've been paying attention nationally through our other partners, what's been happening. I think we mentioned that we went first, so a lot of folks were calling us to figure out what to do and how to do. But ultimately, I think we've been following health regulations, CDC guidance, and in a lot of ways, I think we're extremely proud of the work that we've done during this pandemic. Safety was first, will always be first. And we're always interested in hearing from our partners, employers, and riders, really, as they are experiencing the system. We're actually both going through some process that I think we always do, which is we're continually trying to improve on the safety, security of the system on a regular basis. So we're very interested always. We're very proud of our record, by the way, during this pandemic.
Yes, my husband and I haven't gone a whole lot of places this year, both working remotely, and he took public transit from the Port of Tacoma all the way to our home out here in the Snoqualmie Valley last week, and he came home just beaming. He was like, "This is great! I got so much done. I got to listen to my book." I mean, it was like I gave him a vacation by saying, "Hey, you can take the bus back." So, I just wanted to offer that story as just an acknowledgement of all the work you guys are doing to help us get back to what is the new normal and being able to kind of re-engage in some of the things that we haven't for a while for whatever reason. So thank you so much for all of your work. And for our employers, thank you for your insights today and for all you're doing to encourage your employees and those in those households to take public transit. Just a reminder that this webinar was recorded, so you can re-listen to it, take some snippets here and there after this program, and it will be emailed out in a link from the Seattle Metro Chamber of Commerce, as well as being on their website. So take care, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate you.